Okay, the recording has now started. Welcome to today's meeting of the Child Support Guidelines Advisory Committee. For several of you, today is the first meeting. We did have our kickoff in December, and now we have this scheduled as a recurring meeting on the third Wednesday of the month. On the agenda, our first item is roll call and introduction of new committee members. Because we do have several new members, I think we'll just go through the full roll call and have each member introduce themselves when I call. And if you could just say briefly your background of if you're in private practice, if you're an attorney, or what type of law you practice, and if you are a government agency representative, what agency you represent and what your role is. And then for our parents with lived experience, if you want to share a little bit about your background, you're welcome to do so. We have some parents who are ordered to pay child support and some who receive child support. So we have both perspectives here. And just as a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and we will be posting the meeting on the public website page on our OregonChildSupport.gov. I see we do have a few more people joining now. So I will just do a reminder. We are recording this meeting. We're just getting ready to do roll call. And we are going to have each member introduce themselves. So by way of introduction, I'm Dawn Marquardt. I'm the Deputy Director for the Oregon Child Support Program at the Oregon Department of Justice Division of Child Support. I also serve as the statewide travel liaison, and for the purposes of this committee, I am the facilitator of this meeting. So first up, we have Erin Biencourt.
Sorry, let me see if I can get my. Sure where it is. Okay, here we go. Can you hear me, Dawn?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Erin Biencourt. I am currently a family law attorney practicing in Eastern Oregon and Pendleton. Prior to that, I worked for the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation. I was their child support program manager and program attorney, and that's kind of my segue onto this committee. Prior to that, I worked at the Josephine County DA's office, doing child support enforcement before that was turned over to the state. And then prior to that, I had worked at the public defender's office and was responsible for the child support contempt defense. So in a nutshell, that is where my child support experience comes from.
Thank you, Erin. Donna Brand.
Good morning, I'm Donna Brand. I'm the presiding administrative law judge for the Office of Administrative Hearings. Have been here for 20 years running the program. Prior to that, I was at the Lane County DA's office doing child support. Prior to that, in private practice, also doing family and criminal law. 14 years in the military doing administrative law, and I've served on the last 3 GAC committees.
Excellent. And for any newcomers, GAC is sometimes what we refer to the Child Support Guidelines Advisory Committee as. Do we have Deborah Dowdle here today? I didn't see her in the list. Okay, if she joins later, we can come back for introductions. Deborah is one of our parents with lived experience on the committee. I saw Kelly Evans join. Kelly?
Yeah, I'm here.
Although we did introductions the last time, we're just doing briefer introductions because we have some people that weren't at the last meeting.
Sure. So I'm Kelly Evans. I've been a practitioner for 26 years now. I do family law in the Hillsborough area, and I was previously on the child support committee revisions, 11 years ago, I guess.
All right, thank you. Do we have Tabitha Fish here today? Tabitha? No Tabitha yet? Okay, she is also one of our parents with lived experience. Luciana Fontanini?
Hi there, I'm Luciana Fontanini. I'm a policy analyst with the Oregon Child Support Program, and I have worked for the program for a very long time, but this is my first time serving on this committee. That's
Thank
it,
you.
I guess.
Jeremy Gibbons.
Hi, the camera should here. There we go. I'm Jeremy Gibbons. I'm a deputy district attorney with Clackamas County, and I've been in the child support program for a little over 20 years.
Thank you, Jeremy. And you also served on the last committee, correct?
Correct. I'm in a staff position. Yes.
Correct. And do we have Heath Hadaway here today? Not seeing him in the list. Maybe he'll be joining us. Heath is an attorney in private practice in the Bend area. He also previously practiced in Louisiana and I think has some practice in Washington. Martin Herbst.
Yes, hi, Martin Herbst. I'm a branch manager in the child support program at Oregon City, and I've worked as a case manager. I've been with the program, the child support program in Oregon for about 16 and a half years. Prior to that, I also worked in child support in Nevada in the district attorney's office in Clark County.
Thank you, Martin. And you were on the last committee as a case manager representative?
Yes.
Excellent. Chris Hill, welcome.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Chris Hill. I am with the Oregon Judicial Department. I am the child support legal analyst, which means I handle all things child support involved for the courts all around the state. I also actively work as a liaison with the Department of Justice Division of Child Support Agency and the multitude of things that go on back and forth between the agency and the courts. I've been in this role a couple years, and prior to that, I was at the Multnomah County Court facilitator working with self-represented litigants, in particular, helping navigate the child support system and the paperwork that they often have to do associated with that.
Thanks, Chris. Trina Chloe.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Trina Chloe, she, her. I work at the Hillsborough Regional Office of the Oregon Law Center. So I have been working with legal aid clients in family law issues for nearing 23 years.
Great, thank you. Natalie Otero.
Good morning. My name is Natalie Otero. I'm with the Oregon Judicial Department. I am currently the family law court facilitator, and I'm bringing in close to 30 years of court experience.
Thank you. Sabrina Owen.
Sorry, I lost my mouse there. Hi, I'm Sabrina Owen. I am the Oregon District Attorney Association liaison for the Child Support Program. What that means is that I represent the district attorneys who have child support programs in their office to the child support program.
Thank you. Judge Raines.
Sorry, it took me a while to get on. I'm Keith Raines. I'm the senior circuit court judge who was Washington County for about 20 years. Before that, I was doing St. Andrew Legal Clinic, which I started up in 1977. I'm currently serving on Facilitators Committee, Subcommittee, and Education Subcommittee. I'm on the SFLAC itself, and also serving the Child Support Committee, and have 3 different LFACs that I'm liaison to.
Excellent. Thanks, Judge Raines. And you were on the prior committee. I don't remember.
Actually, I wasn't invited.
Oh, sorry.
But I'm glad I'm on now.
Excellent. I wasn't here. It wasn't my fault. Okay, next up we have Mike Ritchie.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Mike Ritchie. I'm an assistant attorney general with the Oregon Department of Justice, and I serve full-time as the general counsel for the child support program. What that means, I guess, is that I'm essentially the chief legal counsel for the child support program. I've been in that role since 2009. Before that, I had a private mediation practice, and I mediated cases for the Oregon Court of Appeals. And before that, I was in private practice for 20 years with a firm that avoided family law issues at all costs. So this was a complete change of direction for me when I took this job. And I was on the last Guidelines Advisory Committee.
Thank you. David Rivera Bernaza.
Yes, hi. I'm new in the committee, so I'm trying to learn to see if I can use some of my skills. My background is engineering, and I was really looking forward. I've been using some AI and stat- statistical analysis for the last couple of years. Currently doing construction and jumping into development, but this is one of the areas I want to see if I can input and help you guys. I'm in a group of parents through the state of Oregon, and I have a lot of feedback to give. Yep, that's pretty much it for me.
Thank you, David. Is Marissa Salinas here today? Okay, I'm not seeing her right now. Marissa is also one of our parents with lived experience joining us. But it doesn't look like she's on right now. So if she joins later, we will have her introduce herself. Linda Shear is a retired mediator. She is traveling today, so she is not attending, but she did send me some notes for parts of the conversation. Shannon Sporsine.
Hey there, good morning. Shannon Sporsine. I'm from the Oregon Department of Human Services. I've been with the agency in various roles for about 26 years. Currently, though, I've been a policy analyst for TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, for about 6 years now, and been working pretty closely with the Oregon Child Support Program and as a liaison and subject matter expert for the child support component of TANF.
Welcome, Shannon. Jessica Thomas. Is Jessica here today? I am not seeing her right now. She is also one of our parents with lived experience, so we're hoping that she'll be able to join us soon for a meeting. Amanda Thorpe.
Good morning. I'm Amanda Thorpe. I am a private family law attorney. I've been practicing family law for 18 years now. I have essentially a statewide practice spanning from Southern Oregon up to the metro area, primarily on the western side of the state. I also had some experience with this, having been a child attending school that received support. The first family law hearing I ever attended was as a child attending school on a modification when I was in college. So I'm very excited to be involved with the committee. I'm also on the Family Law Executive Committee. This is my 9th year on that committee, and I'm currently the Legislative Committee Chair of the Family Law section.
Thank you, Amanda. And Misty Dawn Viles, I don't think I saw her in the list. Misty Dawn is also one of our parents with lived experience, so we're hopeful that she'll be able to join us for committee meetings in the future. Carrie Villa.
My name is Carrie Villa. I'm a TANF policy analyst at the Oregon Department of Human Services. I work with Shannon Sporsine and I help support the agency in all matters of child support. First time being on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. And Monica Whitaker.
Good morning. I'm Monica Whitaker. I'm a presiding administrative law judge at the Office of Administrative Hearings. I am here as Donna Brand's backup manager. I manage a different program, but I did child support hearings for years, probably did a few thousand hearings before I became a presiding. So it's nice to see everyone. And I've been with the OAH for about 21 years. And before that, I worked in the family support division of the Marion County DA's office. So thank you.
Thank you and welcome. And we did have one other member who, a parent who was going to be on the committee. That was Isaiah Burrell. He unfortunately had to decline being on the committee due to work commitments. So you may have seen his name on a list before, but he is not officially a member now. We do have several members of the Oregon Child Support Program who are part of our larger Guidelines Project team, who are joining this meeting to just listen and to be available to assist if needed. They are assigned to the work groups that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And so you may have an opportunity to meet them and get introduced within those meetings. And as I mentioned, this is a public meeting, so sometimes we do have members of the public, or in particular, I know we had some of our Oregon Child Support Program district attorney representatives who joined last meeting. So you may see additional people in the participant list. Generally, we're having non-committee members stay off of camera unless they are called on to speak or they're presenting on a topic, just so that those of us who are on the committee are sort of the focus of the meeting. So next up, we had minute review and approval. And Alex, did you want to share those now? I believe they were sent out to committee members with the materials, but we just wanted to check and see if anybody had any corrections to the minutes. And sorry, Alex, I don't think I told you specifically about the minutes. Thank you. And so we did capture the people who were identified as guests in the meeting last time, just to sort of have a record of who was in attendance. If we just scroll through those, we had sort of the call to order. We did have Kate Cooper Richardson, who is the director, join the meeting last time to kind of give us an overview. And I'm just doing this as a little bit of a recap for the people who weren't here last time. Essentially, the task of this group is to provide a report on proposed changes to the guidelines advisory, or not, sorry, on the guidelines administrative rules that then will go to Kate as the director. And she will then review those recommendations, and the ones that are approved will move forward. And there is essentially a deliverable from the committee, which is that report. And there are subsections on the areas that we've already identified, and those work groups on those specific topics will sort of help draft the reports for their sections that will go into the overall report. And as she indicated last time, she really appreciates all of the committee members who are volunteering their time to serve on this, because it either takes us away from other work activities, or in particular for our parents with lived experience, may take them away from their children or their other jobs where they're not being directly compensated for those. So we really appreciate everyone's participation here. Do you want to scroll on a little bit further? We did talk about the guiding principles, but I have that as a separate topic on this agenda that we will talk about in a little bit. And then last time we gave the overview of the work groups, and specifically covered the policy papers that helped us identify the specific issues. And those will be talked about a little more later today, and then within the subgroups. We did work on the establishment of the work groups last time, and we'll get a report on that status following up here. Next up on the agenda, Marcy's going to do a little update on the Teams channel, and we were successful in getting our future meetings scheduled. Did anyone have any corrections or additions to the minutes? I am not seeing any. We will go ahead and get those posted on the public website now, so that they will be available for future review. Next up on the agenda, we have Marcy Hamilton for any Teams channel updates. Marcy?
I don't have any current updates for the Teams channel. Everybody should be assigned to their work groups, and if anybody has any issues, please email me and I will get it fixed. Thanks.
And just one question. Did we get Donna Brand added to the Teams channel, or is that still pending?
Lenny was working on that.
Okay.
We got it fixed enough.
Oh, great.
It's a creative fix, but it'll work enough.
Okay, thank you. And as we mentioned last time, we do have work groups set up in the Teams channel, and we're hoping that this will be an avenue for document collaboration and some of those types of things. We did run into a couple of scheduling issues where we were trying to schedule directly through Teams, but I think we may be changing that for future meetings to just do it from our Outlook process. But we will kind of work through that. If there is anyone who does not have a lot of experience with Teams and needs a little walkthrough, you can let me know or send an email to the Child Support Guidelines questions email, and we'd be happy to set up time to kind of walk you through that. I think there may be some functionality that is different if you're calling in on a phone versus a computer. So there could be little caveats that way that we can help figure out a solution to if we need to. Okay, Alex, do you want to share the guidelines principles?
Yep.
Thank you. And Marcy is one of our policy analysts helping, and Alex is also one of our policy analysts who is helping out. So the 4 overarching principles for this committee, starting with what they were for the last project, is they were the guidelines produce fair awards. The rules are understandable to families and practitioners. The calculation required to implement the rule is not complex, and the outcomes are enforceable. During our last meeting, one of the suggestions that I think Kate made either during the meeting or right after the meeting was adding in number 1 that the guidelines produce fair and equitable awards. That's something, equitable awards and just processes in general is something that we are working on as the child support program. So we have that added as a proposed update to these overarching principles that we want to keep in mind when we're doing this. And just as a reminder, the child support guidelines, each state is required to have child support guidelines, and they're required to be reviewed on a periodic basis. Our guidelines are in our administrative rules, and so there's some updates that we do every year. For instance, the self-support reserve is one that we do annually, and so we have more flexibility than some states where their child support guidelines are in statute and may require legislative approval to make changes to that. So we have a more flexibility there, but the goal is that the guidelines can be applied to the majority of cases. There may be rebuttals or something needed, but we're wanting something that applies to the majority of cases and can be easy to understand, and also from even a coding perspective of, is it something that we can program into the calculator that everyone can use? So that's where some things may get too complex to put into rule. And so if it's that complex, it's more of a, maybe that just needs to be a one-off and isn't part of our overall guidelines. Does anyone have any questions or suggested updates to our principles that we will apply to the Guidelines Advisory Committee this time around? I've not seen any hands. Okay, then we will, with the update of adding and equitable, these will be our overarching principles that will apply both within our work groups and this committee as we move forward with our work this time. Thank you. Next up, we are on to work group updates. I talked a little bit already about we have the policy papers that we identified for the 3 work groups that we already established, and those will be the starting basis of things that the individual work groups will cover. We did have a question last time about, are we limited to only the items that have already been identified or not? And as I indicated at that time, no, we're not limited. That's sort of the threshold that we're starting from. And so when we get into work groups, we can either, if additional topics come up, they could be discussed here, or they could arise in the work group, and then the work group could report back at the next Guidelines Advisory Committee of new issues that have come up. So that's kind of the format we're going to use there. And I already briefly mentioned that the idea is on those specific issues that we've identified for the work groups, they will help sort of draft a report that has their work group recommendation that will then come to the full Guidelines Advisory Committee. And when we get to that point, if we need to officially vote on something, but we will have consensus within the Guidelines Advisory Committee of how we handle things in the final report and recommendation that moves forward to the director. Okay, first up on the list, we have healthcare coverage. And who's covering that one? Alex, is that you?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. The work group for healthcare coverage, we scheduled the first, like the kickoff meeting. I'm sure most of the, or all of y'all who are on the work group have received the meeting invite. We plan on meeting and having the first kind of the kickoff meeting next week on Tuesday at 3:30. So I'll be sending agendas, and we're gonna start talking about probably identifying. We're just gonna kind of get a lay of the land and going over the topic, identifying kind of a lead for the work group, and figuring out meeting recurrence and whatnot.
Thank you. And I just realized one thing I didn't cover that I think I told you all I was going to, is that within those work groups, we're hoping to have a sort of chair, co-chair, or at least a facilitator from the group. So one of the primary things that will happen in that first meeting of the work groups is looking for a volunteer for that role. We do have a specific policy analyst assigned to each work group who will help with scheduling meetings and sort of tracking things and minute taking or items like that. And depending on if the facilitator or chair is there, we have additional staff assigned who will help with those sort of administrative tasks and participating in the group. But that's kind of the how we're looking to handle those. Okay, income is next.
That would be me. A bunch of you got lots of emails from me trying to sort out a meeting time. So we're set to meet next Tuesday afternoon at 1:30. And for the few folks who are overlapping on both the healthcare and the income, I'm sorry that we did them on the same day. It was just the only time we could find for everyone. And as Dawn and Alex already went over, we're looking to just kind of get a lay of the land and identify who wants to fill what roles within that committee. And I have an agenda drafted, and I'm going to send it to y'all on Friday afternoon, I think. So you'll have a little bit of time to look at it, hopefully before our meeting.
Thank you. And parenting time credit.
Hi, everyone. Oops, there I am. We are scheduled for Tuesday, the 28th at 11, and I will also send out an agenda prior to, but all the same things from the other work groups.
Thank you. And within those committee meetings, I think there'll be, the work group meetings, there'll be sort of a consensus within those groups if you want to record those meetings or not. We don't want the recording of the meeting to be a barrier to fully discussing issues. So it's just sort of up to the work group of how you're going to handle that. And if the recording is just going to be for minute taking purposes, or maybe if you have a few people who are unable to attend, you can kind of work that out within your work group. All right. Did anyone have any questions about the work groups? I think we got everyone assigned to a work group, but if we missed anyone, we will follow up. And the meeting times will be available if you're not officially on a work group and you want to join all the meetings, or for a specific meeting, you're welcome to do so. All right, we are moving on to income disparities between child's households. And Alex, I think you've got that also. And so this was a a suggestion that Judge Rain or yeah, he had actually, I'm sorry, this one he had actually sent out to the committee last time. And so this is one of those types of issues that if people have additional suggestions, we could talk about here to determine if this item gets assigned to one of the work groups or how we kind of move forward. So this was in the materials. Judge Rains, is there anything up front that you wanted to add?
Well, I was thinking about formulas even further, and I was thinking of, identifying the highest paid or the highest amount that we're using right now for child support and doing a delta, anything above it, as another possibility of looking at. So just a question of developing a formula that's going to be equitable is the most important thing. But I think there are a number of ways to look at it in terms of the delta or difference between the incomes of the parties over a certain amount, and then assigning perhaps a percentage, 5% for one child, additional 2 or 3% for each additional child, all sorts of different ways of looking at things. But I'm hopeful we could take a look at this because I think it's a prevailing problem that I've seen in a number of families.
Did anyone have any immediate thoughts or discussion points on this? I'm seeing this as something that would go to the income work group as part of an initial kind of follow-up conversation there. I don't know if this may end up being one of those things when we look at the guiding principles of is this too complicated to do? But I haven't had a chance to really think about that and certainly don't want to foreclose any conversation on it. Or maybe it's parenting time, Lucci.
No, I wasn't going to weigh in on the which work group, but I was wondering, Judge Rains, if you could give a little more. I feel like at a basic level, in theory, the guidelines are supposed to do this, and so if they aren't doing it, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about what specific problem the income disparity, like why the guidelines themselves aren't doing this, that this would solve.
Well, we regularly come to people that have a 50-50 share now, and it's happening more and more. And the party that has the significantly lesser income really has the child in penury. And so the child isn't getting the same benefits in that household. And then that child also tends to want to move towards the more affluent household too, regardless of what's in the best interest of the child. Simply because, well, who doesn't want to live in riches rather than poverty, right? So I think it is a real problem. I think it can be addressed to some extent. This initial formula proposal is just one idea, but I had a bunch of other ideas that would be more income driven in terms of trying to equalize. I'm not a communist, okay? Not even a socialist, but to somewhat equalize the child's experience in each of the households. So again, it's a significant problem in a number of families that I've seen, where there really is virtually hardly any support being ordered compared to what the income capacity is the parent who's paying it.
And Judge Rains, in that situation, is the child support, is the calculator being used and that's what the calculator is showing, or are the parties agreeing to no support?
No, it's not a party's agreement. It's just a matter of the calculator tops out, and it essentially doesn't really provide enough resource for the parent who has lesser resources. It's simply, you're just reducing the amount that's going to that parent with no real looking at, is that really enough to meet the child's needs in that household?
Okay, thank you. Amanda, I saw you had your hand up. Oh, you're on mute. Maybe you just realized that.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So the very first thought from a litigation perspective that comes to mind is that this is going to raise, I think, and I don't disagree that it's a problem. I want to start by acknowledging the problem The risk that I see is the potential for litigation where we're talking about household incomes, but our calculator doesn't take into account household incomes, but just each parent's income. So you could certainly have a scenario where you have comparable standards of living because a partner in the home or some other circumstances leading to that. So I don't take issue with this fix, but I would anticipate that it'll increase litigation around rebuttal factors, which I have found largely to be unsuccessful in practice. And so I would just note that concern as a threshold issue, but perhaps not one that's insurmountable.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, I was just going to point out or mention that we may want to. First of all, I like the model that Judge Raines has developed. That said, the new scale is going. I think that Jane Venor, when she produced the scale for us, said that we're going to have sticker shock because of the extent to which the amounts of support at various income levels are going to increase. So I think before we, maybe adopt this sort of what I call a supplement to the guidelines, we need to consider whether the new scale amounts partially or wholly address Judge Raines' concerns.
Thank you. As an initial kind of thought, do we think this is more appropriate in the parenting time work group or income, or just sort of something that's shared with both?
I thought it might best go into the income group.
Okay, Martin?
Yeah, I was going to say the same. I agree. Income.
David? You're on mute.
But I think they should go to the income parental plan because based on these scenarios, it's a 50-50 parental time. And that's has to do, it's very complex, I would say. Each household is different and they have first-time experience on this as well as some other families. And this is a bigger, broader scenario that probably can bring some personal experience and for some other people experiences. It's just really broad. Thanks.
Thank you. Jeremy?
As a matter of process, would I be right to presume that given the duration of time we have to work on this, those groups could refer issues to one another? Because I think it's a good question. Like this issue has feet in both subject areas. So if income takes a look at it and thinks, hey, what's implicated here? Let's analyze it a little bit and then ask parenting time to weigh in. Does that seem reasonable?
Yes, I think it does. And sort of the fact that we're discussing it here and everybody here has it, I think it's something that can go to both in that way of, and I think as questions or reports come back, and by reports, I mean even just an update. So that will be part of our process going forward, is that we will have, by Mike, we will have part of our agenda each time will be sort of the status update from the work groups. And so if there's new issues that come forward of something that either you've been discussing, but now it needs to go to a different work group, or even just coming back to the committee, I think that is perfectly acceptable. And my initial thought was income, but then as I was thinking about the parenting time, I was like, oh, it's sort of both. So I think officially we can have it go to income first. But everyone's aware of it on the parenting time group too. So it's just sort of how it plays out there. I think that will work. Did anyone have any additional comments on this for right now? And this is just one example of, we're not making any decisions on anything today. Or at any individual meeting, it's conversations about it, and then trying to figure out what would that look like, or is there some other issue that's already been identified and how they tie in. Okay, next up, we have the childcare cost discussion. And this was based on, I think it was a Judge Rain's comment from the last meeting of trying to determine if this group wanted to try and do something with the guidelines, considering the high costs of childcare in Oregon and the impact on obligations. Judge Range, as a starting point, was there any additional comments you wanted to make?
No, that was it.
Okay, because Linda Scheer couldn't be here, she did send me an email that I'm just gonna read from her. And she indicated that her concern is that it's so variable throughout the year and year to year. In mediation, she usually addresses it by excluding the cost from the calculation and then ordering as additional child support that the obligor compensate the obligee for a fixed percentage of the cost promptly at the end of each month, with a requirement for documentation of costs to be made available. And she said that was one way to deal with the high variation. Also, another could be to compare the actual cost at the end of the year to the estimated cost in the calculation and order additional payment to the obligee or a credit to the obligor accordingly. She did make a note that she thought the definition of what a childcare cost in the summer, that definition should be made clearer. So there was that comment. Trina, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, it sounds like that approach that involves, coming back to the exact totals at the end of the month or the end of the year sounds like something that's only going to work with parents who are already really cooperative, and doesn't sound like something that's going to be easy for the program to enforce.
Thank you. And perhaps that is an indication of if she's doing mediation with people, it's parents who are trying to work together and come to a resolution versus the ones that are maybe already going through a court hearing where they aren't able to reach agreements.
Indeed.
Is it possible Denver Group is just going to come up with a new child support scale anyhow themselves? So we're just sort of wasting our time to be addressing it when they're going to be doing it anyhow.
We've got sort of a proposed scale in the Center for Policy Research report. And I did not get a chance to go back and look at the specific conversation of, or discussion of childcare in there. On the policy team, is there anyone who's prepared to comment? And if not, that's okay, because we didn't specifically talk about that.
I would have to go back and look to see if there's any discussion on it. It's not directly, like, it's not a specific component that I think got called out. And right now, our guidelines have chosen to tie those child care amounts to what DHS, Department of Human Services, is assisting with, and that seems like a place where it might make sense for us to reconsider if that's not either it's creating too high of amounts for paying parents or not enough for a receiving parent. That might be something we can to look at reevaluating.
And Lucci, do you have an initial thought of either an existing work group or either a miscellaneous work group, or we hadn't specifically identified childcare as a separate group, or anyone, if not Lucci?
I mean, I think that it could be its own thing, but I do think that just anecdotally that working parents who aren't making a ton of money but are making consistent money are the ones that have the hardest time with childcare, and that's on both sides of that equation, both the paying parent and the receiving parent. But I don't know if that means income or not. It just is that's on my brain because I'm on the income work group.
Alex?
I did a quick, just an initial review of or a quick search in the report, and there are some instances where childcare has been addressed. And with that, my kind of gut reaction is as a suggestion that it could be something that gets folded into the miscellaneous work group as the other work groups kind of meet and discuss. This can be maybe a topic that either gets folded into the miscellaneous or put into the miscellaneous work group or folded or taken by one or the other, maybe the income, but just an initial reaction I wanted to kind of share that I did a quick search in the report, and there are a few instances, quite a few instances where childcare is mentioned or at least acknowledged. And there's some data associated with that.
Okay, and maybe it would be helpful if we had like a mini policy paper that kind of highlights the places where childcare is discussed in the full report that we could bring to a future meeting here. Might be a way to at least call that information out. Thank you. David?
I don't know if actually childcare should be part of the child support. And everybody has their children. They find a way. Everybody usually finds a way, even if they don't have another source of income. Yeah, that's why I don't think that should be part of the child support, but that's just my personal opinion. Thanks.
Thank you. Judge Raines, you were next.
I was wondering if it's possible to make that entire report available to the committee.
Yes, it is posted in the Teams channel, and it also is on the public webpage. So if you go to the Child Support Guidelines Advisory Committee page, it is listed under resources. It is the Center for Policy Research report, and then it's also duplicated under the reports section. And did we get?
I just added it in the chat too.
Oh, perfect. I was just going to say, did we get the chat working?
Yeah, it's working. So I put it there. I put a direct link to it.
So yes, that is accessible. We didn't send it out as a separate PDF just because it was lengthy, but it is there. Amanda.
The chat is not working for some of us.
Oh, okay.
It's just, we're having trouble loading your messages. Try refreshing. Refresh does nothing.
Okay. Oh, sorry. That was Trina. I was like, wait, I don't see Amanda's lips moving.
Yeah,
that would be quite the trick. No, my comment was going to be that perhaps, and it's just a suggestion, that in terms of allocating the childcare question, that it seems to be a good fit to me to be under the medical insurance subcommittee, because it also relates to expense sharing, and I think has a comparable, if I'm not mistaken, allocation. So perhaps, especially, and I would also say that the medical insurance cost sharing is maybe one of the smaller categories as it is. So perhaps that committee has some room for that, but that's self-serving of me because I'm on that committee and I wouldn't mind tackling the childcare issue as well. But until we figure out the scope, it made sense to maybe make that expense sharing perhaps.
I like that suggestion. I am just going to share my screen for a second. And hopefully it is, you can see it. So if you go to OregonChildSupport.gov under calculators and laws, that's where we have the Child Support Guideline Advisory Committee page set up. And on that, just as a refresher, we do have the committee membership. And then for each meeting, we will post the meeting agenda. We've got the meeting protocols. We also have the meeting archive link, which takes you down to the bottom. And we will post any specific resources that were reviewed at a meeting under that meeting archive. And that's where we put the meeting recording. But we have under both the resources section, we have the Center for Policy search report, and then separately under reports, we have the full name of the report and linked there. And then we did also have the federal laws and rules that are specific to the child support guidelines and child support in general posted there. So if the chat is not working for you, that is where you can find that. Okay, so for the healthcare coverage work group, I think perhaps updating that title to be sort of expense sharing might be that might be a good recommendation. Maybe that's something that work group can specifically talk about during their meeting and see if that if you'd be amenable to that. Okay,
Sounds
thank you.
good. Noted. Yep.
Did anyone have any other questions or feedback on this topic for right now? I'm not seeing any. I am grateful that people are participating and sharing, so that is helpful. Next up, we had child attending school discussion. And this was sort of two potential questions that Linda Shear had raised last time. And then, of course, she isn't here today. So I think we will plan to bring this back to a future meeting, but we wanted to just mention it a little bit here and see if this group had any other specific child attending school topics that they had already or issues that they had already thought about. And just as a kind of a reminder of the discussion we had last meeting, this group is proposing changes to administrative rules, and the actual child attending school provision is in statute. And so while this group could make a recommendation about pursuing a law change, that is actually outside the scope of what this work group would be doing. So just if anyone has we should totally revamp the child attending school law, that's going to be outside of our scope. But we could make a recommendation to Kate, but it just wouldn't happen as part of the official guidelines advisory committee work. So Linda had provided a little bit additional information to me in her email, so I will just share that here. So she had said there are some very extreme outcomes when one or more children are at home and one or more children are attending school. And she said often the support for two at home is doubled when one child is home and the other is a CAS, child attending school. And also that she thought the rules about when one parent should be ordered to pay versus two seem unclear. So that was just sort of the background issue that was raised. Does anybody here either have any specific feedback on that or an additional child attending school calculation issue that you wanted to mention? Judge Raines?
Sorry, always talking. I ran into a horrible case in which everybody agreed the child had never gone to school, but he'd done that initial thing where he had sent in a thing and said he was going to go to school. So he'd done that, everything right to initiate, but he never showed up at school. And 7 years later, father who'd been living in Florida the whole time is hit with a huge arrearage. And there was no solution for it because he hadn't demanded he didn't know about the law, of course, that requires you to send in a requirement that the child actually follow through and either do something and then he could not pay. So he never sent that letter. And I'm not sure, that it's in the statute. I'm not sure if we can create an administrative rule to get around that. So if everybody agrees the child never went to school, that the child support obligation can be satisfied. Again, I just don't know if we can do that administratively. I brought that up before as an issue and was told, do not touch the CAS in the legislature because it's a hot potato. This was carefully crafted and everybody's agreed to leave it alone because if we don't leave it alone, it might just go away and it'll just cause a huge uproar and they'll be gutting stuff and it will be just a disaster. So I'm not sure how often that happens, but I can't imagine it doesn't happen with some frequency where a child just doesn't do it and a parent not knowing that they need to demand that the child attend school or do something. So that's my deal.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
Hi, yeah, well, I concur with all those bullet points, but I was just gonna add specifically on the last one about the knowledge and understanding surrounding that both parents are responsible for payment. That's a huge issue a lot of times, especially when one parent has just been paying prior to 18 and they want to come in and enforce it, do the school thing, and they think it's only going to get, especially if the child's looking to enforce it, they think it's only going to get enforced against the paying parent, and they don't understand that it could be both of their parents. They might be aligned with one parent more than other, but don't realize that both could end up paying. I just see a large misunderstanding in that area.
So certainly, and going back to Judge Rains's issue also, there's definitely a public education component. And I know we are trying to develop better resources and sort of even on our website and other brochures and things, and making things clearer in our forms about those types of topics of making sure, like, you can request the verification on a per term basis and some of those things. Okay, thank you. Donna Brand.
A very different subject when the minor child, the parent at home is getting Social Security for the minor child based on the paying parent's obligation. The child attending school support obligation essentially gets wiped out. And so that 18 to 21-year-old gets no support whatsoever. They also don't get the Social Security because they're over 18 and not in high school. And so there's a kind of a disparate treatment because of the way the rules are designed to knock out basically all the support. So it's a different issue than people are talking about, but it's another issue.
Thank you. Trina.
Yeah, just in response to Chris, off the top of my head, I thought there was a rule, hopefully in the regs, not the statute, that says that, at least as a general rule, support cannot be collected against the former obligee parent once the child starts attending school. But in any event, that seems like it also enters into a whole mess around, like, which parent is actually paying for the kid's college expenses, like who's taking out the loans, who's being reported on the FAFSA as the responsible parent, like all sorts of really fun and super messy things. And just one other thing I wanted to flag, again, that may be more of a practice issue than a rig issue, is supposedly there's a rule that the obligee parent still gets to collect the support for an 18-year-old in high school. But as far as I know, that is not actually what happens. At least in my experience, that's not what happens, that the high schooler starts getting the money directly anyway. So I don't know if there's a fix for that or if we want one.
I think we may have addressed that in Lucci. Is that what you raised your hand about or not?
Yeah, just very briefly that speaking purely for the child support programs rules, because it's not in the guidelines, it's in our the program rules, but we will not establish a new obligation for a parent who wasn't ordered to pay before the kid turned 18. So we generally don't establish those two parent obligations, but if support's gone back and forth between the parents while kids were minors, that's sometimes where we run into having both parents ordered to pay after they turn 18. In general, we're doing that when the child has sought support from both parents, not proactively. And then as far as support being paid to the parent while the child's 18 and in school, the child has to redirect it to their parent. So it's, again, the child's choice. Or if, say, there's something in a court order or some other situation that the parents have reached in court, that could also happen, but it's not automatically going to be paid to a parent because the child's in high school still.
So if the child support program is providing child support services, by default at age 18, if they've provided the verification, the support for the child attending a school goes to the child attending school, but they could contact us and say, no, I do want it to continue going to the parent I'm living with. And then we have a process to do that. So that's what happens on the cases that we are handling. Okay. Kelly?
Yeah, I want to kind of just throw out something that might be a little bit help for everybody going through this process, is that there may be some reluctance, and there probably is going to be some reluctance to make formal changes to the OARs. But one of the things that I think we've really focused on the last time we did this was to, well, first of all, the commentary got taken away from the previous iteration of the guidelines. And so we pulled the commentary back, but one of the big things that we did was to really kind of focus on doing more education, especially if you consider that what 85% of the people that are using laypersons that are using the child support calculator, as opposed to practitioners kind of thing that have that knowledge kind of thing. So I think there are a lot of things that we're going to talk about, including the things we talked about today, that would benefit from the idea of adding additional commentary to explain things to the lay public about this is what this rule means, this is what we contemplate, more examples with regards to what specific rules are going to apply. And so I think, again, I'm coming back to the idea here that there's going to be opportunity for us to expand upon and add things related to any of the things that we discussed today to the commentary to the OARs, because I think that's where we're going to be able to really kind of educate the public, and frankly, the vast majority of the users are going to have some place to go to figure out, does this apply, does it not apply? Another thing that I just kind of thought about, which is we've talked about at least one scenario where 7 years later you get hit with an arrearage kind of thing, and there are circumstances that do arise as practitioners where we feel like we're stuck. The OARs or the statutes don't help us. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I think if Judge Raines would probably chime in on this thing, my suggestion might be to suggest to the legislature that there be some revision in some statute somewhere that gives the judge, whether it's an ALJ or a circuit court judge, the authority to essentially get back to what we would do for parenting issues, which is whatever's in the best interest of the children. In relation to child support, it would be the court has the authority to make revisions to the child support calculation as appropriate kind of thing. Again, that may be a little bit of a slippery slope, but again, I think it's one of those things where there are occasions where we do feel like we're kind of stuck. And unless I talk to Mike Ritchie or somebody else, I can't figure it out. So that's just kind of another suggestion that I'll throw out there as well.
Thank you, Kelly. That's great comments. And I was just thinking if Mike Ritchie was here, I think he might say, unfortunately, in that situation, we can't do retroactive modifications. And there's federal law that prohibits that. So I think that may be a situation where if nobody raised the issue, we might not be able to do anything because of the federal law. But certainly when we talk about it later, I can rely on Mike to comment on that a little further. But I think there's certainly things to look at of how, better education and commentary to the rules and those things can be helpful there. Judge Raines.
Well, again, I think the fear still is if we try and do anything with legislature, we may lose the child attending school, or at least it may devolve into a huge debate, which absorbs all legislature's time. So that's why I was so strongly discouraged from doing anything about the particular bad case that I was dealing with.
Yeah. It is a general principle that we have within the program about trying to touch the child attending school statute, just because of where that may go. But certainly, if there's fixes we can do in the rule or clarifying things, I think is really, if there's things that we can try to address and even the education components are definitely helpful. Kelly, did you have another comment, or is your hand just up from before?
Sorry, I took it down.
Okay, perfect. So I think we did get a couple of additional things about child attending school. You may or may not know, we do have a specific child attending school team who are involved with the school verifications and getting forms out to kids as they turn 18 and processing those and handling that whole process. So our thought was that we might be able to have the managers or maybe a lead from that team join a future meeting, and maybe we would even kind of go through a child attending a calculation involving a situation where we had a child at home and a child attending school, and maybe we could work through a couple of those issues here and see if we have any additional questions to take forward there and determine is that, you know, where do those issues go? So that was kind of the thought here. So it was helpful to hear some of those additional examples of topics. And it wasn't on my radar about the Social Security one that Donna Brand raised. So I think that that's helpful too, as some of those specific things that we might want to see. Okay, is that, I mean, essentially at that point, does that just become a modification is needed because the credit shouldn't be there in that situation. So I think we will plan to bring that back to either the next meeting or a future meeting where we can have a little bit more conversation about that specific issue or topic, I guess. Any additional questions or comments on that? Nope. Okay, we are now at the roundtable part of the agenda. This is primarily if someone had some other issue that they thought about that they wanted to mention here, of either things to talk about at a future meeting or potential things to be referred to the work groups. So did anybody have any specific things they wanted to talk about today? I am not seeing any hands, and I don't think I saw anybody else join the meeting after we kind of got going. So I don't think we have anyone else to introduce. So we do have our next, well, we have the meeting series already set for this meeting. So again, that is on the third Wednesday of the month. So our next meeting will be on February 19th. I think an hour and a half seems to sort of work for these. And I know for some people there was conflicts if we tried to go beyond that. So for now, that is the plan for these. With that, I think we can adjourn for today. I look forward to hearing from the work groups how that process is going. I am not officially a member of any of the work groups, but as my schedule allows, I plan to jump in on those, but I didn't want my calendar to be a barrier to scheduling those. So I may jump in periodically. Okay, thanks everyone. Happy New Year.
Thanks all.